reference to erection diverting underpants. And it's true about the dentist too, about smile. That's why they give you laughing gas, I guess. Because I went to the dentist the other day. My dentist, he looked into my mouth, and the first thing he said was, "Jesus Christ." And my dentist is a Buddhist, so that's unusual. And then he gave me the laughing gas, and it was all fine. In fact, about 2 minutes later, I said, "Hey, take it all out." And luckily he didn't. And in 2004, I got a job hosting The New Inventors on ABC TV. And Andrew described it very well, showing you Australian inventions and the inventors that create them. And I didn't get the job because I had any expertise or experience in the area of invention or innovation. In fact, one of the lovely compliments they paid me at the time and said, "You'll be great, James, because you'll ask the stupid questions," which I did. In fact, I was quite suspicious about the term innovation because, you know, I've worked in organisations where oh, by the way, you better start the clock because I'm here. I've worked in, so they've got a little clock there so you don't go over time, but mine's just stuck at 20 minutes, so I'm going to be here forever. I've got 20 minutes to go, I will. So these bastards let me know when it's 20 minutes. You've probably been in organisations where we have a change program or innovation. They go, well, you know, everyone's going to be change and be better, and they do the program and you just oh, good, thanks very much, that was great. And the other thing was, around that time I remember feeling, so I was thinking about innovation, invention a bit, I was working out good, so you won't hear all that, that I had some experience that made me profoundly suspicious of innovation, things that we knew that were actually not better. I remember around the time I got the job, we went and bought a new fridge, and the guy said, "You should go buy this one because it's got this new thing, if you leave the door open it beeps, new innovation." I said, "Well, if it's so clever, it should just shut. Wouldn't that be better?" It was around the time of the 2004 Olympics. There were all these people getting in trouble for drugs in sport. I thought a great innovation to invent these things we now have to try and ban. It doesn't make sense. I remember the most sensible thing that was said about drugs in sport at that time was actually said, believe it or not, by a rugby league player, Darren Lockyer, who's quite a smart rugby league player, being a Queenslander. Not that that's saying much, is it? A smart rugby league player, so that's like saying a tall bonsai tree. But Darren Lockyer said there's so much stuff at the moment, additives and diet supplements and whatever, you've got to be really careful. I always reckon if you can't spell it, don't take it. I thought, fine, but for most rugby league players wouldn't even be drinking milk if they followed that rule. And even now, there are still examples of innovation that I find, kind of sus. I was on the plane last night, the other guy next to me couldn't help himself, so proud of his new Kindle. He was telling me about, he said, it can contain 100 books, because you need that on a 1.5-hour flight from Sydney to Brisbane, and the battery's going for so many hours and it only weighs 200 grams. Just as I was saying, the flight attendant said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're preparing for landing, please turn off all electronic devices." So I pulled out my book. These are amazing, you can read them while the plane lands. So I was slightly suspicious about new things, whatever. But then every week I started to meet these people who had created things that no one in the world had ever thought of or created ever before. Ever before. And I began to think how amazing that was and see how they were full of exhilaration and pride and excitement on this great adventure. And I remember one of the things that really made me think how kind of amazing it was. This guy, you know how in the first decade of this century, everyone was thinking about saving water before there were floods, right? We were thinking about saving water. And every day, every single one of us turns on a tap, actually usually 3 or 4 times a day, and watches water go down the sink. We just watch it for about a minute. When do we do that? Whenever you turn on the hot tap, right? Because what comes out? Cold water. You wait for it. Now, we all do that, and I would have looked at hot taps spewing out cold water hundreds of times in my life, as you would have. And I always assumed that's the way it had to be, because you've got to get rid of the cold water in the pipes. This guy, Walter Lloyd Smith, right? Walter Lloyd Smith. He said that he was looking at it one day, and he got an idea that maybe you didn't have to waste that water. Maybe you didn't have to waste that water. And he invented a thermostat for the pipe that you put in the pipe, right? And whenever you turn on the hot tap, and all water below a certain temperature is diverted away into a holding tank. So nothing comes out of the hot tap until the hot water comes out. The next time you turn on the cold tap, the cold water, you just saved comes out. Now, if everyone had that, that would save zillions of giga, mega, whatever they call them, litres a year, wouldn't it? But we all look at that and we never, I thought, how did he see that? Why him? He wasn't an expert, he wasn't a water engineer, he just saw it. Why didn't I think of it? And it began to occur to me what a driving and dominant force innovation is in the history of our species. It's our point of difference as a species. Monkeys and rats and everyone else, they do pretty much what they do a few thousand years ago. We don't. And the pace of change now is quicker, is faster than it has ever been. The way we get to the future is through innovation, it is through change, it always has been, it always will be. And that's quite exciting. I'm glad I'm a part of this species and another. But it is also terrifying when you think about the implications of that on your business. In that, no matter how well you're doing things today, no matter how brilliant and cutting edge and wonderful, everything you do today is, because everything's changing, in 10 years, maybe 5 it won't come. We know that, because change has always occurred. None of you, I would assume, are doing things exactly the same way as you were 10 years ago. Probably many of your jobs did not believe it existed 10 years ago, at least the way in which you do them. So that's the terror of innovation and change. It's easier to be a monkey because you can just keep hanging out doing things the same way. The way we're successful is to improve and do things better. Today's cutting-edge best practice is tomorrow's fax machine. That is an interesting artefact from the past. So we all need to work out, I think, how we can make things better, how we can improve our businesses, how we can improve our lives, really, by examining them and changing them. And I want to tell you a few things that I think inventors and innovators do that possibly we can all do a bit more of. The first one is the absolute super special secret ingredient, and it's think. How anticlimactic is that? You're going, but I spend a whole day doing that, that's why I'm tired at night. But do you? Do you really? How much of your day do you spend thinking about ways in which you can make your business, your job, your life better? How much of you spend reacting? Now, reacting's not bad. We have to do it. We have to react to bosses, we have to react to clients, we have to react to the phone, to the email. We used to have to react to the fax. We don't have to do that so much anymore. We have to react to keep the business afloat today. But how many of you would have days when you're so busy doing all that stuff, going to meetings, answering emails, being accountable to everyone, that you don't have time to actually think about how to ensure that your business has changed so it's still going to cut it in 10 years' time or 5 years' time? How many of you have days when you don't kind of thing? How many of you never have a day like that? How many? Right? Everyone has them. And I would suggest to you, it's slightly cruel, but everyone does it, that whenever we have a day like that, we're not doing our jobs properly. We're not doing our jobs properly. What inventors and innovators do is they prioritise thinking. I remember talking to an inventor, and I said, "How did you think of this?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I was sitting on the couch one night having a thinking time," and I said, "You what?" He said, "Well, I make sure I spend at the end of every day 10 or 15 minutes. I sit on the couch and I just think about all the things I have today. I'll write down any problems, any opportunities. I think about it." I said, "Don't you have kids?" But that's how. I remember talking to a guy around a bookshop, and he said every Tuesday morning, I go around the corner and I come back and I walk into the shop as a customer. And I try and see it with fresh eyes and I just look around and I see things. And then after doing that, I go away and I think about what could have made that experience better for me as a customer. Should that display be there too? Everyone, I think, should spend at least some of the day where you're not accountable to any electronic device or any other person. You're just accountable to yourself, where you are usually alone. You can do it with other people. Often doing it outside is good. Where you actually just think of new ideas that are going to make things better. It's great to keep a note of problems and opportunities, to jot them down and spend a bit of time each day actively doing the thing we do best, that is wrestling with those problems and opportunities, wrestling with just a suspicion that maybe that thing over there that we do that seems to be a bit of a hassle, maybe it could be better, but if I don't have time to think how to make it better, I won't be able to think how to make it better, I won't have any ideas. Linus Pauling, a great American scientist, said, the only way to have a great idea is to have lots of ideas. So don't expect every idea you have to great. The corollary of that is, I think, that if you don't have a lot of ideas, you won't have a great idea. And the other corollary is if you don't spend time thinking about how you're going to have ideas, or trying to have ideas, you won't have it. Let me give you some examples of really elegant thinking, I think, that I saw on the new inventors. The first is we fill the world, to make sense of the world, we fill it with assumptions. So, for example, going back to that hot, cold water diverter thing, the assumption I made, and we all made when we turned on the hot tap, is that an inevitable cost of getting hot water is getting rid of the cold water in the taps down the sink. Right? That's an assumption. And there are assumptions we make every day when we go to work. Try and remove the assumptions. Try and just really see with the eyes, see your business, see your job, see your life with the eyes of a child. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. My kid asked me the other day, why is a chair called a chair? And I said, even Wikipedia doesn't know that one. Ask stupid questions though. Wheelbarrows, right? Who's used to a wheelbarrow? And what's the worst part of using a wheelbarrow? It's the end bit. Like you put it in, that's all right. That's all right. But what about the end bit where you have to tip it up? That's the bit we have to, and that's the hardest bit, isn't it? Right? That's the worst bit. But that is, you can't use the wheelbarrow without tipping it out. So what's the point of asking a stupid question? How can you get rid of that heavy bad bit at the end? It's a stupid question. It is a stupid question. Some guy had the guts to ask it and he invented a way of getting rid of it. That is, you just put a hinge on the front of the wheelbarrow, right, and a little thing there to hold it down at the back, and a little clip on the handle, so you walk on and stop suddenly and flick it, and the top goes whoop, and just empties itself, and you just go, I didn't have to bend my arms. It's a stupid question because everyone knows that you have to do that. Unless you give yourself permission to question everything about the way you do things, you won't be able to see outside those assumptions we all make. Sometimes the solution is right in front of our eyes. Right in front of our eyes, but we're so blinkered we don't see it. This guy was playing tennis at his mate's place up at Coffs Harbour. They had the lights on, and his mate was telling him about how they were doing fish farming. His dad was doing fish farming at the dam down below on their property, and he said if it's not working because the fish eat, they need, flesh. They're meat-eating fish. They're not piranhas, but there's two types of fish apparently. I can talk for 20 minutes about the fish, but I won't. But buying the stuff for the fish to eat was too expensive. So he saw the insects, right, buzzing around the light, and he started thinking, and he went and he built this little pontoon, and he got this really long light line, about 10 feet long, and he attached it to the pontoon, and he took it back to his mate's place, and he carried it down the dam. Good carrying mine, wasn't it? Because, it's there, so you go on it. Anyway, they put it in the dam, and turned on the light at dusk, and so the light, this long light was floating about 2 inches out of the water, and what happened? All the insects came and flocked around the light, and the fish just poked their head out of the water and ate it. They were getting takeaway home delivery. The information was there for everyone, but no, one bit of information. Insects are attracted to light. Other bit of information, the fish need food. Often we put bits of information here and here, and we never give them. If you give yourself time to think, to just go sort of soft and dreamy and let them all float around together, then sometimes things will come together in a beautiful way. So that's the first thing, think. The second thing is value. Value ideas. How many times you have had an idea and go, I don't know, someone could have thought of that. I mean, it's probably not very good. How many times have people said to me, that thing on the new inventors, I thought of that years ago. And I go, good on you. And what did you do when you thought of it? And they go, and they hate themselves, right? They hate themselves because they didn't. The inventor of anything you can think of wasn't the first person to think of it. Almost inevitably, I'm assuming this, but I can safely assume someone else thought of it, the wheel, the car, orange juice, but didn't do anything about it. Because we're all 4-year-old children who are scared, aren't we? We all think, no one will care. And, you've got to be brave with ideas. You've got to be determined. You've got to have courage to let them out into the world. I think every organisation should have a rule that you're not allowed to judge an idea until you blow it up as big as it can go. Right? You've got to be kind of see how good it is first. Then you can apply criticism and analysis, but blow it up first. Be kind to ideas. Let them live, because that's why we're here. It's why we've got this wonderful world. Everything that you can see at the moment is a product of an idea, even me. The third thing, so value ideas, is to use them. And this is the point at which I think you need to be more rigorous and more analytical and learn how, as an organisation, you take ideas and really determine which ones are worth trialling, which ones just aren't gonna make it, which ones are worth actually implementing. And there you use all the, I guess, the logical and rigorous analytical tools. You can't just say, I want to be great if everyone had ideas and we just do everything and live in a dream world. Soft head, hard head. Soft head first to think, hard head last to analyse. So if we do that, there's a wonderful concept going around at the moment. There was a conference on about it in Sydney last week, learning from failure. And it was a conference that celebrated failure. And one of the key messages was, if you want to be an innovator, if you want to be an innovative company, you've got to accept that not every idea, not everything you have will be successful. And you've got to learn how to fail successfully, successfully, cheaply and quickly. That is by putting not so many resources, not saying, this is going to change our whole company, but just working our way with a new idea, with a new process, to actually test it and trial it cheaply and I suppose, and quickly. So that if it fails, you haven't done your shirt, like so many inventors do, and you can take some learnings away from it, but you haven't invested everything in it. I think it's a great concept, learning from failure, because if you shut the door to failure, then you're shutting the door to success in many ways. If you're too scared of failing, then you won't succeed. There are many things organisations, I think, could and should do culturally to encourage people to think better. And the first one is to make it clear it's part of the job. It's part of the job to make it a key performance indicator. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying to someone at the end of the year, you've hit all your deadlines, you've been enormously accountable and done everything on time and people love you, but you haven't come up with any new ideas to ensure that this business is going to be round in 2020. Not one. That's part of your job. Make it, and people, I think, will react generally well to that as an imperative, because it's actually the fun bit, isn't it? Trying to work out how to make things better. The other thing is to treat ideas. If you think ideas, new ways of doing things, innovation are important, treat it like it's important. Don't put a little suggestion box there that anonymously sort of take something. You don't know what's going to happen to it. If you've got staff, make it clear to them that if they have an idea that they think is going to improve the business, you want to hear it. The door's always open. It's a priority. It's important. And when they come in and tell you the stupidest, dumbest, most ridiculous idea you have ever heard, thank them. Thank them. Because next time they might come back with a worse one. Thank them again. And eventually they'll come back with a good one. Right? But if you say, well, that's silly because you've wasted my time, are they going to come back? They're not going to come back. Some organisations are wonderful at harvesting ideas from everyone in their organisation, because people feel that they're valued, people feel that it's part of their job, and people feel that those up there want to listen and they feel included in the process. And if you don't have an organisation like that, if you don't have a culture like that, then you're missing out, I would suggest, on the idea that could come from anyone that is going to transform your business. Maybe in a little way, but even in a little way. One idea that makes a little improvement, that increases productivity in some area that you can use for the next 5 years, that is pretty good cost-benefit analysis on that. Can I end with a challenge to you all, really? And that's this. Spend a bit of time this week, find time thinking. It could be on the bus, but it can be at work. Just go out into the sunshine, if there is any. Go for a walk, do it at your desk. Take something. I was trying to write a speech the other day, and I was thinking I went for a run. And I should play the message actually. I was running this really steep hill and I had an idea. And I had my phone with me for precisely that reason. And I started dictating, I rang myself and I started dictating Jesse. And when I got home, all I heard was, and anyway, the idea was right. So try and have 10 ideas by the end of the week. 10 ideas by the end of the week. Find a little bit of time each day. And then find the guts to share at least one of them with someone. Because you'll never know unless you have a go, right? You don't want to be that person who said, I thought of that 10 years ago, and now Bob's getting all the credit because Bob did share. So find a bit of time to think and share one of those ideas, or do the next step. Even if you don't share, take the next step with whatever the development of that idea is. I had a boss when I was a criminal lawyer, and I was so scared of him. He came and dumped a folder on my desk once, and he goes, read that. And that's quite a long speech. And I read it, and I went back into his office at the end and I said, there's one bit I don't understand this. And he goes, and I asked him, can you only explain this? And he goes, no. Why not? It was a stupid question, so I'm not going to answer it. I said, why was it a stupid question? He goes, I'm not going to answer it. Why not? You go and think about it. So I started crying, and I went out, and I thought about it, and I realised eventually that it was a stupid question. And I realised why it was a stupid question. And I went back and said, it's a stupid question because it is, isn't it? He went, yes, go. But it taught me two things, and the first one is that sometimes we think we're working really, really, really hard, but we're not actually thinking that much. We're just buzzing around doing all the things we have to do. Sometimes we're not thinking that much, and we should think every day. And the second thing is that if we use our brains enough, the solution to all our problems, all our challenges, is between our ears. Pretty much. If we think about them, they're in there somewhere. Can I leave you with this? Innovation is not what you do if you have time after you've finished all your work. It's the work. Thanks.